The American Civil War is often remembered as a contest of inevitably crushing numbers. But what happens if the Union loses its most aggressive battlefield commander right before his most defining fight? In early 1862, Ulysses S. Grant was in a precarious position. Despite securing early victories at Forts Henry and Donelson, he faced intense political scrutiny. Rumors of his drunkenness swirled in the press, and his own department commander, General Henry Halleck, openly distrusted him. Imagine a timeline where those political pressures succeed. Halleck's jealousy wins out, and Grant is permanently relieved of command just weeks before the looming Battle of Shiloh. Looking at this chart comparing total wartime resources, the North holds a massive advantage. They command millions more fighting-age men, vastly more capital, and nearly all the industrial steel output on the continent. But raw materials require a military doctrine to effectively use them. Without Grant, the remaining Union generals subscribe heavily to the strategy of conciliation. They believe in carefully capturing territory and occupying strategic landmarks, hoping to persuade the South to surrender without destroying its armies. The North has every resource required to outlast the rebellion. Placing that massive war machine in the hands of cautious, territorial managers, however, takes the burden of winning off the military and places it squarely on the political willpower of the Northern public. We see the immediate consequence of this caution at the Battle of Shiloh. On the morning of April 6th, the Union encampment is caught completely blind by a massive, overwhelming Confederate assault. In our actual history, Grant spent the reigning night after that brutal first day visiting his battered commanders. When advised to retreat, his psychological resilience held the line. His response was simple: whip 'em tomorrow. And they did. Take Grant off that field, and the outcome shifts. The cautious remaining leadership, lacking that sheer iron will, looks at the horrific casualties and orders a full withdrawal. The Confederacy walks away with a monumental victory. A retreat at Shiloh claims a secondary, hidden casualty. General William T. Sherman had previously suffered a severe nervous breakdown. It was Grant's direct mentorship and unwavering protection that kept Sherman in the fight. Without Grant, Sherman is sidelined for good. In a single stroke, removing Grant deprives the Union of its two most effective tacticians. It proves exactly what happens when a doctrine of caution encounters the shock of sudden, extreme violence. The leadership snaps. This map shows Halleck taking operational control, embarking on a glacial march toward Corinth. It takes his massive army 30 days to cover 20 miles. This agonizingly slow advance provides the Confederate Army ample breathing room to withdraw, regroup, and dig into fresh defensive lines. Moving further into the war, a cautious high command strictly adheres to military norms. There was no commander willing to take massive operational risks, like intentionally cutting his own supply lines to live off the hostile land. Therefore, the audacious campaign to capture Vicksburg is never even attempted. The strategic result for the Confederacy is immense. They remain securely linked across the Mississippi River. Texas beef and Louisiana supplies continue to flow eastward, keeping their armies fed and heavily armed. The Union might slowly gain acres of dirt, but without operational risk-taking, those territorial gains are hollow. The enemy's ability to wage war is left completely intact. Fast forward to 1864. The Union has a sprawling military machine, but it fights a series of disjointed, entirely uncoordinated campaigns across Virginia, Tennessee, and the Deep South. In reality, it was Lieutenant General Grant who eventually brought these theaters together, engineering a grand master plan to strike the Confederacy on all fronts simultaneously so they could not support one another. Without that synchronized pressure, the Confederacy maximizes a concept known as interior lines. Because the Union attacks one at a time, Southern generals simply use their internal railroad networks to rapidly shuffle troops back and forth, reinforcing whatever point is currently under threat. Given this constant breathing room, commanders like Robert E. Lee easily exploit the disjointed Union advances. They dig in and rack up brutal, lopsided defensive victories, massively inflating the Union casualty lists without suffering decisive losses themselves. The North has overwhelming numerical superiority. But without a unified strategic master plan to apply it all at once, they squander it in isolated defeats. The crushing weight of the war bypasses the military and transfers directly onto Northern civilians. the Confederacy never needed to conquer Washington, D.C. or march on New York. Their true win condition was much simpler. They only needed to make the conflict too expensive in blood and treasure for the Northern public to endure. Without the driving momentum of massive, war-altering victories like Vicksburg or Chattanooga, the Northern home front collapses into deep stagnation. War weariness consumes the public. That stagnation turns into violent domestic fallout. Draft riots explode across northern cities as citizens actively revolt against bleeding out for a war that looks increasingly impossible to win. This brings us to the immovable deadline of the November 1864 presidential election. Abraham Lincoln faces a deeply hostile electorate, and he has no major military triumphs to justify the horrific national bloodshed. The political result is devastating for the Union. George B. McClellan runs on a platform of negotiating a peaceful separation with the South, and he defeats Lincoln at the ballot box. Vast resources, immense capital, and millions of men cannot win a war without a leader urgently driving them forward. By removing Ulysses S. Grant in 1862, the Union inadvertently lets the political clock run out, resulting in a permanently fractured United States.